In case you've been living under a rock, or perhaps just not paying attention to the gacha space recently, you might be unaware of the fact that Genshin Impact has been getting a lot of heat from its community. This hate wave started since a significant part of the player base has begun pointing out things they don't agree with in recent releases of the game. Now, hate wave might not actually be the right term for this, since a lot of the points people are making might just be valid. And so in today's video, we're gonna go over the reason this is happening, the points people are making and whether or not they're valid, and what this change in perspective could mean for the game's future. Side note, we're also gonna give away a free welcome pass to one of you guys. Just like in the previous video, all you have to do to enter the giveaway is subscribe or be sub, comment down below and leave a like if you enjoyed the video. The winner from the last giveaway is Cynical Mandate, who left an interesting and non-biased comment. But anyway, to redeem, just add me on Discord, ad is in the description below. Now we're gonna start with the most polarizing of issues that people have pointed out, which is recent design choices. And to start with a bang, we're gonna start with Mavuika's design. Somebody who I, for absolutely no reason and just coincidentally, started calling the JJ Zipper Queen. The most common complaint about Mavuika's design by far is that she doesn't belong to any tribe. And that is true. She really doesn't look like she belongs to any tribe of the ones released so far. I've seen a lot of people also defend against this by saying that her tribe has yet to be released. And again, that is something that's true, but I find it really hard to believe that MiHoYo would ever release like a full biker tribe. I guess we'll have to wait and see. But as far as this complaint goes, I think it's totally valid. She does look out of place, at least for now. Whether being out of place is a good or bad thing, I will let you guys decide for yourselves. In my humble opinion though, looking very different and maybe even a little out of place should be an actual requirement for any Archon type character. I think they should be looking different. I think they should be looking even a bit out of place, because at the end of the day, they have a ton more impact to the story and they actually will probably be there for the final battle when all the other characters are probably just gonna be put on the back burner. Now the last two complaints that I've seen being brought up a lot about Mavuika's design is her being very sexualized, which I'll keep it short. You could be a blind man and you'd be able to see how hypersexualized she is, and her kit being out of place. Now, I don't think that's a good point. If people say that her kit was weird, I would have agreed with that, but saying that it's out of place is kinda wacky, because the kit is tied to the character, and while the character is out of place, the kit for the character is not out of place. I don't know, does that make sense? Now this next complaint I've seen doesn't really have much to do with Natlan itself as much as it has to do with Genshin as a whole, and it's people talking about Genshin not having small male characters. To keep it short and simple, this is a very valid point. We got multiple short female characters, we have absolutely no short male characters, and I think it would be right about time that Genshin does add these characters to the game. This guy here would be the perfect opportunity, but at this point I highly doubt that they will add a character like this. Now, the last and really good point that I've seen people put out and hating on Genshin for was the lack of dark skin characters, especially when the new nation at play is Natlan, who is supposed to represent South American countries. Now, I'm not sure exactly why it took Genshin so long to add one dark skin character. We got Yan-san now. It's only one though, it's not that many, and honestly probably most of the characters from this region should have been dark skinned. Now, I'm not sure if Genshin devs have sent all those characters to Paris, or if they've ever seen a dark skin character, because they definitely don't look like this. Does the game deserve hate for this? I don't think it deserves hate, but I definitely think the questions people are putting out are very valid. Now we're gonna talk about recent story writing and pacing. This is another thing that people have been upset about, and comes without saying, but spoiler warning ahead. We're gonna talk about Archon Quest and what happened in it up until kind of like the present point. So yeah, you got your cue to just skip forward. Basically, this Archon Quest was okay, but a lot of people had problems with the pacing of this Archon Quest, and it makes a lot of sense because it did feel a bit rushed. It did feel like characters that needed a lot more screen time did not get any, and this is something we're gonna come back to a bit later, because there is a particular character that people have asked for a lot more and they basically got nothing. So when it comes to the Archon Quest, the pacing brought a couple of issues, and one example that I think stands out the most is the war arc. We had preparation for the war, we then had the war, a lot of people died. It felt like those people meant nothing, really, if you look at the grand scheme of things. At least that's what it felt like to me. I did pay attention somewhat to the dialogue, but again, a lot of it was just kind of like really bad to go through. And honestly, so far this was kind of a letdown, especially all of this coming after Fontaine, which was by far a fucking masterpiece. I think people expected a lot more. Again, this is gonna be something that we're gonna come back to, this whole post-Fontaine idea, because Fontaine set the bar way too high for everything that we got here, and I think this also plays a role into why people are upset about, honestly, everything that we got in 5.3 and Natlan probably in general. Now, do I think the Archon Quest is over? I know it's portrayed that way, but I don't think the actual Archon Quest or like storyline that has to do with Natlan is over. This honestly felt like a really really long prologue that was like badly written. I certainly hope there is a lot more to it. We still got 2 regions that have to come out, and so I guess we'll have to wait and see what those regions bring in terms of like storyline and quests. Maybe it ties it all nice together. I don't know, I guess again we'll just have to wait and see. Now, obviously, when I talked about screen time earlier, I was referring to the captain. The captain is probably the coolest Harbinger introduced so far. He's had absolutely enormous impact into the story, but his screen time is absolutely lacking, unfortunately. We're talking about a character that has spent the last 500 years not sleeping because he basically houses hundreds if not thousands of souls within his heart that just keep him awake at night, and considering all of this, he still put up a really great fight against Mavuika. He did have a couple of cool scenes, especially again like the one where he was fighting Mavuika, but honestly that doesn't feel enough for how great his character was. Oh, and I guess he also came in at the end and kind of just saved everyone. Also, the devs have put out a bunch of trailers and a bunch of like animated shorts going a bit more into detail on his storyline, so that helps as well. But I do hope we're gonna get him as a playable character, although he's technically dead now, because that's gonna give us a character story quest, which is gonna give him a lot more screen time that he definitely deserves and that a lot of people have requested, and I think a lot of people would be happy with that. So would all of these bits and pieces be enough to hate the game? Well, normally I'd say that they're not enough to hate the game, but obviously I see where everybody is coming from. If Natlan was just another regular region, we'd probably have no problem with all of these things, because many of the things that are happening in Natlan are things we have been used to for a long time. I think the biggest thing that impacted people's perception and what changed people's view of the game was the fact that Natlan came after Fontaine, and in every single aspect, in my opinion, Fontaine was absolute peak.
Say the line, Bart!
According to the judgment of the Oratrice Mécanique d'Analyse Cardinale.
Absolute cinema. The story was amazing, the character design was really good, and every single character felt like they belonged to their environment. Exploration was absolutely amazing, everything just tied together so nicely, as well as the Fatui that was in that region, which is Arlecchino. So obviously when you compare Natlan to what Fontaine was, it's gonna feel like a step down, and that's probably what got people worried. Now, with all of that out of the way, it's also important to keep in mind that Natlan is not over. We still have many patches, we're basically not even halfway through the entire region, and there is a lot more that has to come out. We have 2 more regions that are gonna be released sometime in the future, hopefully soon, and then a lot more characters that have to come into play. So let's pray and hope that they fix the problems and that they take into account all the feedback that players have been giving out, because it would be a shame for Natlan to be basically a massive step back before we go into the final region of the game, which obviously is Snezhna, I guess. Obviously, a lot of people have also been complaining about power creep recently, and not only have a lot of people been complaining about power creep, but I've seen a lot of people also throwing this word around without really knowing what it means. And so to make sure that people, at least you guys that are watching my video, will know exactly what power creep is if you don't know already. Power creep is basically when new elements are introduced into a game with increased strength or abilities, making existing elements much weaker or useless. Obviously, when this happens several times, the original elements end up becoming pointless. Now, this is the kind of official definition for power creep, and if it doesn't make sense, just take out elements, replace it with units or characters, and you have a Genshin situation on your hands. Now, Genshin is a bit different than most games, because while power creep is a thing, power creep is not really the exact same as in other games. So for example, a lot of people have been complaining about Mavuika being extremely power creeping to other characters, right? Now, of course, she's really strong, she does insane numbers, but by no means she makes Arlecchino or Hu Tao useless or even that much weaker. They are still very viable and usable units. However, what Genshin does to truly power creep units is they change the environment. And obviously this environment change happens in like late stages of the game. So for example, if you look at Spiral Abyss, which is endgame content, they will make the Spiral Abyss in such a way that it's basically a massive pain in the ass to clear if you don't have Mavuika or just any character from Natlan that has access to the Night Soul thingy. And also another place where you could say that power creep is an actual problem when it comes to Mavuika, for example, is just exploring as a whole. I'll give as an example myself. I pulled for the Wanderer just because I wanted to have a character that could fly, so it would help me with exploring. And now Mavuika, not only does she fly, but she goes insanely fast. She also climbs up walls insanely well. So, you know, people like me that have pulled for Wanderer have basically kind of lost their money, if it makes sense. Now, obviously, power creep is something that can affect every single player, but realistically, in a free-to-play game, I don't think people should be complaining too much about power creeping, because as a free-to-play player, you are supposed to plan your wishes out. You are supposed to figure out exactly what characters you want and get those characters. If you are a whale, also, I don't see why you'd ever be affected by power creeping, because at the end of the day, you're still gonna spend tons of money to just get all the characters and max them out, so it doesn't really make sense to complain about it. The only people I see being affected by this honestly are just two types of people. It's either people that never pull for any character, they save up a ton of primo gems and wishes and all that stuff to basically max out a character that they love, and then max out that unit's weapon to basically create a monster as a free to play, because obviously you can only do that like once or twice throughout probably like the entire game, so getting power creeped after waiting 40 years to max out a character really fucking sucks. And then it would also be probably people that spend just a little bit here and there, you know, they try to get all the characters, they try to get all the weapons, they would sometimes maybe spend a bit more on a character to make it more powerful when they seem like they could get a lot more mileage out of it, only to then be power crept. Those are the only two types of people that I honestly see being affected by this. The rest of the community, which is probably like 95% of the player base, I don't see them being affected as much about power creep, so I honestly don't think it's that big of a problem. And at the end of the day, I also think that power creeping is not necessarily a bad thing, especially in a game like Genshin, because you need something to come back for. Or not to come back for, but to just keep the gameplay loop going, because realistically most of the people are doing one of a few things. So most players probably play for story, and for the people that play for story, then they really don't need to care about power creep, because you can do the storyline with absolutely any character. Again, just like before, the people that really are affected by power creep would be people that play for endgame content, in which case you would always have to be on top with new characters and builds. When it comes to people that continuously want to play the game, you'll have to realize that at some point you will have all the content finished. The map is gonna be fully explored, all the characters you have so far will be fully built, and the only thing you'll be able to do is just get new characters and build them up. And so in that regard, again, power creep is not something that affects you. So with all of these things in mind, and also to end this yap session about power creep, is power creep really that big of a problem in Genshin? Well, my final answer is gonna be that no, it's not that big of a problem. Can it become a big problem in the future if they keep just creating new mechanics that only go around these new characters from like newer areas? Yeah, I can see that becoming a problem, but so far we are okay, although to be fair, the direction is kind of wrong. And so hopefully this is the last time we'll see something like this from Genshin, at least as far as natlan goes, and that with new regions this is not gonna be a thing anymore. If you wanna go more in depth and you want a more comprehensive like idea or video about how power creep affects Genshin and gacha in general, I highly suggest you guys watch this video. It's actually amazing. It's kind of in like a debate format, so I highly suggest you just go and give that a watch. And the last thing that I think had like a huge impact on this hate wave, if you wanna call it that, that Genshin has been dealing with recently, is basically other games. I know it sounds crazy, but whenever a new game comes out, a new massive patch for another gacha game comes out, anything like that, that is better than what Genshin is getting. Obviously people are just gonna go to that game and then put it in contrast with Genshin, which is kind of like the titan of this space, and you know, anything that's better from that game, they're gonna complain that they don't have in Genshin, or vice versa. So Wuthering Wave 2.0 coming out, which is an absolutely amazing patch, and I've seen a bunch of people playing it and enjoying it a lot, something that I will do as well in the near future. And then Star Rail coming out with the 3.0 version, which again looks absolutely amazing. I've gotten people to question whether or not Genshin is actually doing enough to stay afloat and stay ahead of these two games in terms of content, and honestly I don't really know if it's the case. If you look at Wuthering Waves is doing absolutely amazing now. With the 2.0 patch they had the highest single day revenue, and they got to top 1 on like the Chinese leaderboards. On the same day, Genshin has released an Archon patch, which is huge because normally when Genshin releases an Archon patch, the charts just go crazy for Genshin. So basically having these games come out with new patches that are supposedly amazing will definitely affect players' perspective when it comes to thinking about a game like Genshin, who's actually not been receiving that much love recently. So should Genshin be getting a lot of hate, or rather should the Genshin developers get a lot of pressure from the community? Well, yeah, I mean, if you're gonna have the audacity to release two characters that perfectly synergize together in a patch in which you give absolutely no free wishes to free-to-play players, and you only give free wishes only after the banners are gone, and all of this happening while other games are putting out amazing patches with a ton of new content, I think it's safe to say that, yeah, Genshin devs should be feeling a lot of pressure from the community. So obviously we can never really know for sure what this means for the game's future. What I know for a fact is that the next patch, 5.4, is supposedly gonna be absolutely ass, so that's a topic for the next video. Now, if Genshin continues like this, with other games just putting out insane content, while we just get like filler patches and crazy greed banners like this one we're having right now, with players not being satisfied with character designs and quest designs and all of that, I don't see this going into a good direction. I certainly hope Genshin devs can look at the feedback they get and wake up to fix the things people are complaining about, because not only are other games that are already out putting out insane and nice content that people like, there is also a ton of games that are like highly anticipated, such as Ananta for example. So yeah, whatever the future holds, I can never know for sure. but if nothing changes, I honestly see Genshin slowly going down and actually losing relevancy. But this was it for today's video. Thank you so much for tuning in and staying up until the very end. Don't forget to like, sub, and let me know what you think in the comments down below about this video. Thank you so much again and have a great one.